Well, I'm going to talk about the one-time disposable, totally recyclable, single-use camera.
Wow.
Wow.
I don't think we've ever talked about single-use cameras.
No. And we typically, we consumers or users, we call them the disposable camera. Mm-hmm. And we all know what they are. They are a one-time use. They're pretty much a simple box camera. The film is already installed in it.
Yep.
Fixed focus.
Yep.
Today, they typically will have a flash in them.
Yes.
Specialty, you can get some underwater ones.
Yep.
Don't know about panorama, but they did have them. We think of them as a pretty low dollar quality type of camera thing. They have an incredibly interesting past. Now, the first time I mentioned disposable to someone was a walking workshop too in lovely downtown Findlay, Ohio, and Keith Swan casually said, single use. And I kind of noted it at the time.
The lab repurposes them?
Well, yeah, and because to say disposable does now, and I'll quote, I emailed Keith on this and I said, this is what I said and this is what you said. Why did you say that? And he said, generally, we use single use or one-time use, as it is a bit more environmentally friendly sounding than disposable.
Disposable sounds like you're filling up a landfill.
Exactly.
One camera at a time.
And I have to think about it, and I have never ever heard Kodak or Fuji intentionally have disposable in any advertising or any type of camera.
Makes
It's been one use.
When did we get the word? Where did we get the word disposable from?
We stupid consumers.
We made it up.
We made it up. Yes. Yes, we
Okay.
made it up. Somebody started it, and they put it on Flickr or Facebook or something, and away it went.
Right.
But,
sort of like those jokes you hear in grade school. Like,
Yeah.
Like that another grade school, the same joke's floating around like two states away. Like, how does it get there?
How does it get there?
Word of mouth.
Yeah. And they really are one of the most recycled, reused products that we have today.
Wow.
80% of that camera will either be made back into a camera or it will be reused into something else. 80% is a high number.
It is.
No.
And when the film sales just crashed, and there are places where you go into these big stores, like locally for us, it's a Myers or maybe a Kmart. There was times when there was no film on the racks. Now, they've come back with a little bit of Fuji pre-pack, that kind of thing. The one-time use, we're still there.
They're amazingly popular, aren't they?
They are amazingly popular. Almost everything I think we have today is 35 millimeter.
Yep.
Not necessarily the case in the beginning. There were a few 110s. There were some APS series. The very, very beginning ones didn't even put the film in the cassette. It was loose in there and just taped down onto the wind. Oh. But I know when we would get them in my former retail place, we would take them into the darkroom, take the film cassette out, put it in the bag, and then we took the AA and AAA batteries out and threw them in a box.
Okay.
We reused those for the kids' toys. We
Right.
tested cameras. Oh, yeah. So we had our prehistoric recycling program. And they also tried, and I don't know if any of you remember this, digital one-time use cameras.
What?
Do you
What?
remember? Yes.
What?
And they were putting these digital, started to come out. So let's make a digital. We're going to call it the Rite Aid camera, the Walgreen camera. And they died awful because they wanted to make not only the file proprietary, but the extraction.
Nope.
So if you bought it at Walmart, that's not necessarily Walmart never did this, but you had to take it back to that mart to get the images off.
Greedy.
And when they took them off and put them on something for you, a floppy disk,
Greedy.
you couldn't, you had to have that software to read it. It was a big fail.
Greedy.
Yeah, greedy.
So it didn't work. The whole project didn't work.
Did not work. They
They don't want people to download them. It's short-sighted.
Very much.
And
People did not like not being able to just
Access the
have something
file.
to use, access the file, get it. Yeah.
their failure saved the disposable. Oh, failure saved the one-time use film camera,
I very very much so.
which is
Very much
now in
so.
every store.
It is. But where did it start?
Leslie, where did it start?
Where did it start? 20 or 30 years into photography. So now we're back to 1860.
Jeez.
1870, 1880. There were no consumers.
Started with Mr. Kodak,
And there
George
were-
Eastman.
You're right. And there were no amateurs. There were no hobbyists.
Nope.
Everybody that was buying a camera was buying a camera. Shutter speeds, f-stops. They were also... there was no lab to take your stuff to.
Nope.
You bought your chemicals. You coated your own plates.
Yep.
The whole bit. You did it yourself. 1880, George introduced...
George Eastman.
George Eastman, our buddy George.
My uncle. No, just kidding.
Don't you wish? A little Kodak camera.
It was called the Kodak.
It was called the Kodak.
Mm-hmm.
The Kodak. It was loaded. It was a simple... He actually designed one ahead of time. Shutter speeds, the whole bit. Didn't fly. Then he got simple. The box camera.
Yep.
The Kodak. Held one... And this is also the time that he developed the roll or flexible film. Everything was plate before that.
Mm-hmm.
And this flexible film he loaded into this box camera. It did not even have a viewfinder on it. It had a little arrow stamped in the top. Very basic. 100 shots.
100?
Yeah.
Wow.
2.5 inches diameter. They were circular, round shots. You finished it and you sent it in.
To Kodak.
Yes.
They
And
give
what
you the
happens
prints.
with that? They coined the phrase, you press the button,
We do the rest.
we do the rest.
A lot of history.
Who was this camera popular with?
Families.
Moms.
I was close.
Yes. Because there was no other way to document daily life.
Was Dad's down at the pub?
He's down at the pub with his big old Century graphic, which wasn't even a Century then.
Nope.
It was just a big old camera. Anyway, and he's breathing mercury vapors and, he's getting cross-eyed and it's just not going. And then this thing comes along. Documented, number one, it documented daily life.
Mm-hmm.
It was expensive.
Oh.
The camera cost $25, $650 today.
Oh, so
And then
rich families.
$25 in late 1800s
1880.
dollars. Yeah.
Yeah. But it sold wildly. Then when you sent it in, it was another $10.
Whoa.
But that, of course, got you a reloaded camera.
Right.
And it got you 100 prints back.
Do any prints, scans of these original prints exist on the web?
Sure. Yeah. I think I have a couple even in my just photo collection. I collect old photographs. I have quite a few in there.
Okay.
Those are just like, are they the album or the silver chloride prints that those ones are on?
Mounted?
Yeah.
Not necessarily.
No?
These were
Okay.
not. These were more paper prints.
They were paper print. Okay.
Not like a cabinet card or something that was
Okay.
mounted
All right.
specifically. But I just think how incredible it was that they spent that amount of money and how it just took off. It was just wild. And that was the beginning of the photo lab. You didn't have to deal with the chemistry. You didn't have to know about it. You didn't have to measure it. Fantastic. So what goes around comes around.
Yes. Imagine that.
Imagine that.
No,
That was
really,
it.
a camera you buy in the store that's a reasonable camera. You shoot it and send it into a lab for processing, and you get your prints back.
What an awesome
It's
idea at the
same-
time.
It's 18 what? 18 what?
1880.
It's 1880 all over again. It
1880.
really is special. Mm-hmm. It
I
is
can't
remarkable.
Can't imagine getting your first round of prints back. That was a family event to see them, to show other
Absolutely.
people. How awesome that would have been.
Yes.
Yeah, because
But-
that was still a time when not everybody had their picture taken.
No, that'd have been like the
few-
first TV on the
Yeah,
block.
few people knew what pictures were. Yeah.
You went to a studio. Goes around, comes around.
Yes.
We get to 1986.
Hey!
Some people say Fuji brought it back in our modern time. Somebody say Kodak already had the line going for it. But we've got some other players that was a little bit before what we commonly think of a one-time camera. And I found the coolest ad from Mechanics Illustrated, and I believe this is 1948. And here's a quote. How often have you arrived at a scenic beauty spot without your camera? A.D. Weir got caught in this pictorial limb many times, so he decided to do something about it. And he designed this very simple box camera. It had 8 exposures in it. You advanced it by pulling a piece of paper out. You ripped it off. You saw the numbers in the bottom. And then his camera itself actually had a cardboard wrapper on it. You filled out the address. You put 7 cents on it and dropped it in mailbox. 7-cent stamp. And back they came.
Leslie, are you saying that basically once the 50s came around, people started buying cameras? You're
Yes.
saying that one-time use cameras went out of fashion for a while?
probably at the end of that Kodak era until about 1958,
Because
59.
they were pushing inexpensive cameras
Absolutely.
into people's hands.
Well, and like the Brownies and all those 120s and 620 camera made it pretty easy. Then there were labs on every corner. Many times there were labs. Or the home darkroom scene became big.
yeah.
Really did. It was easy to do yourself.
I'm
So
sitting here at the edge of my seat. What brought back the one-time use camera?
the guy never had a camera with him. He designed a camera that you
Run into a store and you buy the whole kit.
Yes, exactly. And then a lot of times they would have this camera like at the last little gift store at the Grand Canyon. You could pick it up real quick or something like that. It started off selling for $1.29. I think this is a theory because his camera is a little bit different, but this is exactly the same camera.
It says Pro camera on
It
the
says
side,
Pro
Matt.
Camera. It's a plastic body, and it is really simple shutter,
Yep.
simple view finder. This one I happen to have the little card that you would put your $3 in and send it back in to have processed. And they eventually made this in a color version, but it was color transparency only.
Perfect for our show.
Absolutely. And
Perfect.
they mounted them and then sold you a little viewer.
Oh.
In 1966, this really, it was done. It was already done. It didn't really go over well, didn't last a long time. 1966, there was a French company called FEX, F-E-X, and they made a Bakelite one-time use camera, and then and that was 12 shots. They were square, probably
Okay.
just maybe a 120 film, 127, I'll bet.
126 or 127.
Yeah. But then in 1987, who comes back?
Kodak.
You got it. They made a camera called the Fling. And guess what? You get to keep that. I brought one for you and one for Matt.
God,
These
I am
are
stoked.
These are 110, just a basic little box. It is a one-time use camera.
I can't even believe I have learned
87,
so many special things on this, on these last few
yeah.
FPP episodes. This episode specifically, a one-time use 110 camera, never knew existed.
87's when this was introduced. In 88, they introduced the 35 millimeter version. Still
No
called the Fling.
kidding.
In 89, they called, and I think I remember it more as the Fun Saver. Mm-hmm. They still use the name, and that was the year. So this was only out 2 years. But the Fun Saver eventually had a flash on it, but the 110 was discontinued at that point. And we also have, remember the ever classic, we've had this on the show, the Polaroid Pop Shot.
Oh, yes.
What show?
The most ridiculous Polaroid Pop Shot. Kind of a one-time use camera because it was preloaded. You could put no more film in it. But you didn't have to send it out to be processed, but they supplied you with an envelope to send it in to be recycled. So kind of a weird little bird.
Oh, the Pop
Remember
Shot,
that
didn't they
Pop
give
Shot?
you a priority mail envelope?
They did, a priority mail envelope. Pop it in any mailbox and it goes back. Single-use cameras just were incredibly popular. Konica made them. Canon put their name on some. Nikon put their name on some. Fuji, I believe, was the first model to have a panorama, maybe a waterproof.
Oh, the panorama.
There was also, they called them zoom versions. They really weren't. They had a plastic lens you could slide over. It was a simple tele lens.
Okay.
One view, other view. They started using the Kodak 800 film, also the Fuji version in 8.
Did you
faster
say there was
shutter
an
speed?
APS film version of
There was an APS version, too. I don't know if it was Kodak's or not, but there have been APS version disposables.
No single use.
See, single use. So I just found it interesting because we don't think a lot of them today, but they have a really historic importance in our past, especially with processing labs, making them more making photography in general, individual user product rather than strictly just the big old plate film cameras, that kind of thing. And there is quite the little following of people that use these type of cameras.
Tell me about it.
I thought, let's see how many Flickr groups there are. I just put in Disposable. I'm assuming it's going to be the most popular. And I stopped at counting 25 groups.
No kidding.
And there are people that also have these projects called the Lost Camera Project.
Yep.
Yep.
And there's also the Disposable Memory Project. And you drop one of these in a zip-top bag, you put a little instruction in, and you leave it somewhere in the public. Shoot a picture, and you drop it off somewhere else. And somebody else shoots the next one. And if you got the last shot, you mail it back to the person who originated it, and hopefully everybody in between time kept the web address, the site, and everybody could look and try and identify their picture. And so people are just still using them. It's original, or our modern intent, disposable, single use, take it to the beach camera. I don't want to ruin my expensive one. I'm going to do a little snorkeling, get an underwater one. I'm not going to buy a housing type of thing. Emergency camera, leave it in your glove box camera. They just have a lot of uses today, as well as people using them creatively. But I was very, very pleased to read about its history, and I realized it wasn't a modern thing. It's one of our oldest type of photography for we consumers that love to shoot and don't want all the technical jargon behind it.
You can walk into any store, practically any corner store, and buy a one-time use Kodak or Fuji camera.
Yes.
Some with a built-in flash.
Yes.
And is it just because the same thing? Not everyone... Oh, my phone's out of batteries. I'm going to a wedding. Or yada yada. Oh, just let's run and get a quick,
Exactly. Go grab a camera. Keep it in the glove box. It's always there.
Right.
You don't have to remember.
That's what everybody.
That's what everybody does.
School. Yeah.
And of course, I'm always in there getting the teens in there to experience film.
Remarkable.